In today's podcast, we are going to help you avoid the scammers and reveal the glamours of online dating. Gary, you like my rhyme today? I think we're ready to go. We're going to be going over the 7 simple tips for online dating in your 50s and beyond. What do you think of my little rhyme there?
You know what? I'll be honest. It took me a second. I'm like, rhyme? What? Oh, scammers, glamours.
Glamours. You know, it's there.
Deep.
There is some glamour. There is some glamour to online dating. I promise you. And I get it. Everyone listening to this, if you're in your 50s and beyond, you're probably thinking to yourself, I can't stand it. So much has changed over the years. You know, it feels completely different than anything you've experienced, especially if you haven't really dated much. You know, let's say you got married in your 20s, you were married for 20 years, and now you're like, what is this whole online dating thing? Nothing can feel more foreign. Like you've stepped into a different universe than online dating. And now layered on top of that, there's artificial intelligence that's laid into all of this, layered on top of all of this, that can just make it all very confusing. And that's what we want to do today, is really help you break through that, get some real clarity. And if by the end of this, you're like, you know what? Online dating, I feel confident, I feel ready to go, I feel like I can do this, we've done our job today.
Yeah, and I get it. It's perfectly natural, right? Because everything about online dating feels unnatural. This is not how things were done back in the day, right? You don't have a background in this. This possibly didn't even exist the last time you were dating. And so we have a lot of clients that come to us that actually have, and they'll say, I have no interest in online dating. Don't want to do it. Not going to do it. And usually I say something along the lines of, that's fine. You don't have to, but what you have to understand is it's just going to make your pursuit of finding a partner more difficult, right? Can you redecorate a room without buying new furniture and without painting the walls? Yeah, you can do it. It's just going to be harder. Can you get fit without changing your diet? Yep. It's just going to be a lot harder. And so online dating isn't this horrible, awful thing. And that's what Adam and I are going to help with today, is like really demystify this whole thing, because as hard and difficult and confusing as online dating may seem, you know what makes it easier? When you have a guide by your side, right? When you have Adam and I kind of leading you through it, that's what we're here for. We have made this process easier for thousands and thousands of women. And that's what we're going to do here for you today on this podcast.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you get anything from this today, is that online dating isn't really dating. It's just a tool that you use to meet people offline. And if we can think of it like that, it lowers the temperature a bit. It's not like when you're just swiping back and forth, it doesn't really mean anything until you meet the person in real life and you see if there's a click. And it doesn't still mean much until the second date, where that, like I've always said, that's where a real date occurs with online dating. The first meetup is like, you're just meeting another human being, a perfectly good stranger in real life. If it moves to a second date, okay, now it becomes more meaningful and then you can develop a relationship. So it is just one tool in your toolkit, but it can be like jet fuel for you if you're doing it right. And that's what we're going to help you with.
Yeah. And that is our first tip, right? It's like online dating really isn't about dating. You should really call it online, find someone to date in real life. That just doesn't have the same ring to it. But it's really like, we can't stress that enough, is that you should not be doing your dating online. It's really just a way to pick something out, to try to then start having those dates in real life like you're more familiar with. And so again, it's a selection, finding, access tool. It's not actually dating, because we'll talk about this too, but like you don't want pen pals. You don't want to have this online dating experience where you swap messages back and forth with some guy for months and months and months. Like that's not actually what you want. And so, you just got to make sure your online dating is not really dating. There's a lot more to it.
Definitely. And here's the harsh reality of these online dating apps. They're not really designed to get you in a relationship. Like they are to a degree. They're designed to help you meet people, but they're really designed to hit your dopamine centers. And they're designed to actually be quite addictive. They're designed to get you swiping, to get messages, to go back and forth, because that's what gets you to pay them money. And so people can get sucked into it and get pen pals and be talking to 20 different people. And that's when then women are like, or men are like, what am I? You kind of get to a point, it's like social media. You're like, why am I even doing this? Like, this is silly. But if you can think of it in a different term, which is, yeah, it's just a tool to get connected to people. And then once I feel like someone is a potential option, maybe let's move this thing offline and get off the apps. And if you can use it that way, suddenly this can be an incredibly important tool in your toolkit. Now that leads us kind of the second question that we'll always get is, Adam, which app is the perfect app? Which app do I put my picture on there in a profile and suddenly all the perfect guys from Narnia come out of nowhere with chiseled jaw and amazing six pack and are 6'3" and super successful? Which app will get me that? And the answer is, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Every app is going to have a large range of high value men and low value men. And so at the end of the day, the second part, unfortunately, that's layered on top of this, depending on where you live, different apps are going to be better in those places. For example, I've had clients who are in New York who will be giving advice to clients who are in LA about, let's say they're like, oh, Hinge is really, really good in New York. And then like a client will get on it there in LA and they're like, it's not really quite hitting. You know, Bumble is actually doing a lot better here. And what we remind them of is, again, since it's just a tool in your toolkit, it doesn't really matter which app it is. It just matters, is it getting you results? So you got to think of this as kind of an iterative process. You start by getting obviously the best pictures you can, use smiling, get some solo pictures. There's a number of ways to be able to do that. And then build out your profile. And you might have to iterate along the way. Try different apps, see which one is clicking. If one isn't working, it's not necessarily a reflection on you. It's just maybe that's not the right one in your area for your target demographic. You switch apps. It's not a big deal. There's a lot of them now. When I first started coaching, there was just like Match.com, eHarmony. That's it. And then Tinder came, and then Bumble came, and then Hinge came. And then there's all these amazing apps that you can just get kind of feelers there. And you can even Google which apps are best in your area. You'll get a lot of really good information. So yeah, I mean, the big ones, if you're just getting started, it's typically a Hinge or a Bumble. Right? Because you're going to get a pretty broad range of people. They're pretty low investment to get started. It's not like an eHarmony where you got to fill out, I don't know how many questions it is now, but a lot of questions in order to get on. You can just kind of get started and get going. And if you have the money, I would recommend paying for matches or paying for hearts or paying for likes, depending on the app. It works differently. It's not a ton of money for most people who are in this community. And it really is one of those things, you do get what you pay for. So that's at the end of the day, that is the answer. I wish I could just tell you the one magical app, but it doesn't work like that. You got to look at it as an iterative process and see what works for you.
Yeah, and this is where, I'm always blown away by all the women in our community. Like we have thousands, hundreds of clients, and it's perfect for the point that you made about which app works best in which area. And so, have a client from Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, I'm not sure which app to use. And then, post to our community, other folks who live in that area say, well, around here, this is what works best for me. And what you really do see is there are different apps that are more viable in different areas. It's not always the same one everywhere. I love your suggestion about Googling. I think that's great. And I think that thing about the paid, people need to understand that relationships are an important part of your life, and you have to be willing to invest. We invest in every other area of our life that's important. The little bit that you're going to pay for a paid version of a dating app versus the unpaid version, the quality is going to be so much better, and it's worth it. In the grand scheme of your life, it's pennies on the millions of dollars, right? It's the return on investment is out of this world, and it's worth it. You got to be willing to invest in yourself.
Yeah, and just an FYI, we don't run ads on this channel or on this podcast, and this is not a sponsored post. I would not be in the pocket of any online dating site. So this is just truly our advice. But I would recommend paying. It's not a huge amount of money at the end of the day. So love it.
So the third tip that we have, there's a whole new world out there in terms of online dating, and one of the things that people run into, unfortunately, are scammers. Now, one thing I want to just pause as a side and say, there are scammers in real life too. This is not an online only kind of phenomenon. It just makes it a little bit easier for scammers to access you. So, how do you identify scammers? There's some telltale signs that somebody that you're interacting with on an online dating site isn't real and is trying to get something from you. Not everyone, but if they say they're on an overseas adventure of some sort, probably a scammer. If they say they work on an oil rig, probably a scammer, right? If they have some exotic job that forces them to be scarce or elusive and be gone for long periods of time, again, overseas things, possibly a scammer. People who start off very strongly with very exciting stories, lots of drama, lots of twists and turns, lots of I need to do this and like time is of the essence. I got to move quick. They try to get you into the drama so you feel part of the story, and then they'll do things like say, I do not need or want your help, and I would never ask you for money. They come right out and tell you they will never ask you for money up until the point where they hope you just offer, because they never ask. They're just hoping like out of the kindness of your heart you will offer, and then if you don't offer, then they will ask. But those are all signs. No regular real life guy is going to do any of those things. Just not going to do it. And so the last one of identifying a scammer, if you're interacting with somebody and you're like, this guy might be a scammer, dollars bet probably is a scammer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if it's look, here's also the reality. If this guy's profile is someone that you've never like, he's so good looking, he's so perfect, he's someone that you've never interacted with in normal life, like you've never gotten attention from anyone of this quote unquote caliber of sorts. Like it's just I don't want to say too good to be true, but in some ways, like you're getting that feeling like this is like way, he's 6'4". He drives a Porsche. He travels the world. He has this amazing story, and he's just completely in love with me, even though he's never met me in real life. That's probably a scammer, right? Now, the real question is, how do you know? The only way to ensure that you never get scammed with online dating is to not emotionally invest in anyone until you met them in real life, right? Meeting a person in real life, suddenly now they're not a scammer. At least they're not an online scammer, But the vast, 99.9999% of these scammers, they're not like, they don't meet you in real life and then scam you. They just scam you online. I've personally known, not personally, but I've known women who, before they joined Love Strategies, lost hundreds of thousands of dollars from scammers. And none of them met them in real life. And that might make you think like, how, dear God, is that possible? Like, how could someone do that? And the thing is, it's the frog in the proverbial water when it's boiling. At first, they just kind of get you going, and it starts boiling and boiling and boiling. Before you know it, you're giving them $10, $20 and helping them out of really bad situations. And oh my God, they're in jail and they need to get out, and you need to help them post bond, $100,000. And that's how it happens. So the way to avoid that is no emotional investment. This person does not exist to you as a person until you met them in real life. Once they're in real life, okay, now you let those feels come out and go from there. So
I would also just add to this whole scammer thing is, unfortunately, it's going to happen, right? You will interact likely with a scammer at some point. If you do, as soon as you realize that they are a scammer, block. They're done. You're done talking to them. No more emotional energy. You're not doing anything with them anymore. Depending on how long it went on, I would generally suggest switching sites, because what seems to be the case is once you interact with one scammer, it's not just one scammer out in the world. There's a whole collection of them. So they're like, oh, we got a hot lead on this one person. They tip off the other guys, and you just start getting bombarded with more and more scammy types of things. But the most important thing to do is, if you've interacted with a scammer, is evaluate what led you to pick him. Yeah. What led you to fall for it? Is it what's lacking? What are you feeling? What are you hoping for? What was your approach? What was your strategy? Were you being too romantic? Were you focusing too much on physical things? Were you too impressed with his money? There's a lot of different ways that scammers suck you in, and they're almost all bad strategies to find the long-term committed relationships that you're likely looking for. And so evaluating what led you to fall for it in the first place is the thing that will help you really find your way out of it going forward.
Right. Now, moving to the fourth really important tip or strategy is we want to write our online dating profile really focus on attracting a lifelong partner. You wouldn't be here right now if you weren't looking for that. I mean, that is this community. They're looking for lifelong partners. And there's this dreaded moment with online dating where you're like, oh, I got to write my profile. Oh my God, that's like such a to-do. Like, how do you sell yourself? There's nothing harder than to really sell yourself. But at the end of the day, online dating, it's marketing. It's marketing. And so what we want to be thinking about is not writing a profile being like with a shopping list of all the superficial qualities that we want in a person. He needs to be tall, handsome, you name it, advanced degree. That's not really good marketing, right? If you're just like, this is what I want, like, universe, go give it to me. That's not going to actually compel people to be drawn to you, right? Instead, a better prompt would be thinking about how can we position yourself as a high value, unique human being that men will be drawn to. So ask yourself these questions. What makes you incredibly unique? What makes you incredibly interesting or different? And I've recently launched a video on YouTube about what we call the quirkiness advantage, the importance of actually sharing your quirks. There's cute quirks that we can share that are unique, that are interesting. Share those with the world. Don't be afraid to do that. Throw that out there. And look, not everyone is incredibly unique. I get it, but everyone has something to them that is their magic sauce, their snowflake. Everyone's got something. And it doesn't even have to be something. Like, let's say it's like playing the guitar. Even if you can play one chord of the guitar, you're a guitar player, my view, right? I can play 4, so that's as far as I can go. But you can speak to your passion, your excitement for music and the guitar, and there's ways to position in order to make that happen. Or think about yourself as like, what traits can you present about yourself that actually seem to be a little bit contradictory? Right? We call these contradictory characteristics. This can be incredibly attractive to other people when people can't quite figure you out. Like, for example, let's say you're a nurse and you work in the ER. Nurse ER by night, hunting during the day. Like, those are so out of left field that it creates this extra layer of depth to you because they can't just put you in a bucket. They're like, whoa, that's unique. That's interesting. And you don't have to be a hunter and you don't have to be a nurse. You could be a lawyer who rides motorcycles. That's, again, pretty extreme. Or you could just be, a corporate accountant who knits on the weekends and loves to submit her knitting to competitions. Whatever it is, it could be anything like that. I mean, really, but just think about what is kind of contradictory. What doesn't equal another thing, what doesn't really make sense. And that is what creates that incredible onion that someone's peeling away and they're like, whoa, you also like to hunt? Wow, you also like scary movies, horror movies? Ah, wow. And it's like peeling the onion. The final question that you might want to ask yourself when you're developing your profiles, what do you have to offer a partner, right? What are those qualities about you that you want to offer? When we write profiles, so much of the time we're thinking about what it is that we want to receive. And that's important when we're dating and when we meet someone in real life and to hold those standards. But when it comes to the marketing portion of online dating, I would be thinking much more about what value do I provide? And think of it like a marketplace. And when you do that right, suddenly you get so many more options from guys who are wanting to see you and meet you. And more options means more power.
Yeah, that last one is actually based on some research showing that people who make it clear what type of relationship partner they're going to be are a lot more appealing. Because remember, like, people aren't just a collection of traits and characteristics. Like, there's actually a relationship between the two of you that's going to take place, and that's going to extend hopefully for years and decades. And so what kind of partner are you going to be? Are you a particularly good listener? Are you particularly supportive? Are you really good at asking questions? Are you a good conversationalist? Like, there's a whole bunch of things that are like just signs of a good quality partner. And that's not what people often put into their profiles. It's usually this list of like, I want someone who's blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, but all the profiles are like that. And so, you want to have your profile stand out a little bit. Adding some of these things that Adam's suggesting is the way to do it for sure.
Amen.
So
You want to take
that
us to the
brings
next
us,
one? Yeah.
yep, yeah, it brings us to the next one. Number 5 is, so we just talked about how to create your profile. This is how to read your profile. And so here's really what you want to do is you want to fight against your basic evolutionary tendencies to focus only on pictures, right? Online dating isn't like picking out an Airbnb, right? I think, I just was on a vacation through Airbnb. People who were in charge of picking the house just looked at the pictures. The pictures were stunning. We only realized once we got there that if someone had read the description more carefully, it was actually a duplex house. So we were sharing a house attached to somebody else, which, God, I did not want that at all. And it turned out like the other people weren't there for pretty much the whole week. But at the same time, it was like, and I was so thrilled quietly to myself because I'm like, this is exactly what online dating's like. People look at the pictures and they just get enamored with this person. They don't bother to really look at the profile, and you're missing the good stuff. And so we have this specific strategy for how to look at a profile that'll help you avoid this tendency, which is first thing, you get to look at one picture only. Limit yourself. As long as the guy you're looking at isn't a complete, utter, total no, then it's a yes. Because remember, guys aren't taking the best pictures anyway. They don't have friends. Like no guy's going to ask his friends like, hey, buddy, can you come help me take on? Like that's just not going to happen. So their pictures are not going to, as long as they're not a total complete no, it's a yes. Then you read everything. No more pictures. You've only looked at one. Now you read his entire profile. You find out as much about who he is as a person as you possibly can. Only after you've done that, now you have context to look at more pictures. Okay. Then after you've done that, then you message him about something you liked in his profile. And that's it. Because if this helps you avoid the, oh gosh, he's balding. It's kind of in a weird way. I can't talk to him. It's like, he might be the world's nicest guy. And guess what? All guys are balding. It's just a matter of how quickly, right? And so you have to fight the urge to be too superficial. And none of us like to admit that we're superficial about things, but we all are. And so this is a little hack, right? A little way around that tendency to focus too much on the pictures.
I mean, look, with online dating, you got to broaden your horizons. We have to, because and that doesn't mean we are lowering our standards. Standards occur when we start dating a person, when we meet them in real life. And obviously there's some basic things that are like, heck no, this is an obvious no, like Gary said. But if it's a maybe, and yeah, he might be wearing really baggy jeans and not the cool jeans like the diesel ones that people do on purpose, like they're really, really bad. But I'm telling you what, if you had met that guy in real life, and he's got those jeans, but the moment he sits down, he is hilarious. He's the most charming guy you've ever met. I'm willing to bet you wouldn't even care about the jeans. And guess what? Guys, when they're in relationships, you'll go shopping together. Buy him a new pair of jeans. Suddenly, and you get to keep the personality. There you go. So it's just one of those things. I think people they're almost too confident in their ability to pick the right person from an online dating profile than they should. And we're all guilty of it, myself included. I mean, I online dated 15 years ago. I get it. You're like, oh, this person's perfect. But if you do it enough times, you start to realize that the correlation doesn't really exist too strongly. Like the ones that you're really excited about, you go on a date and you're like, oh God, what am I doing? This is nothing like I expected. And then the ones that you're like, I don't know, it wasn't a no. You go out with them and you're like, oh my God, she's beautiful, she's charming, she's interesting, she's very intellectual. All the things that you could never get from an online profile, you got to get in real life, and you just got to take the action. So,
yeah. And so the 6th tip that we have is you want to make sure that this guy passes 2 little tests. The first one is the IRL test, and the second one is the best friend test. So the IRL test is in real life. So when you're talking to people or thinking about messaging somebody online, the test you have to think in your head is like, if this was real life, if we were in a room full of people, is this someone that I would approach? If we were at a party and out of everybody there, would it seem weird if they approached me? And really, this in real life test is a way to see if they're in your league. And you really do want to date people that are in your league, so to speak, because that increases your chances. And this is specifically in here because what the research shows about online dating is because you get to see all the options and it's on a screen, it somehow emboldens people to message people and hope they're going to date people who are well out of their league, people who they would never try to date in real life. And what happens is in real life, we're a little bit more realistic, we're a little bit more tentative, and that's not a bad thing. It increases your chances. And again, we focus too much on superficial qualities when we're online dating. And so it really boils down much more to character and personality. And you need to give more guys a chance and stop being picky on the wrong qualities.
Yeah.
The second test is the best friend test. And so this really gets down to that personality and character thing, which is not about pictures. This is, could this person be a best friend? Do they sound like someone that you could be best friends with? The other flip side of the best friend thing is, would your current best friends like this guy? Is this someone they could share time with? Is someone that you would have fun with? Is someone who that, your friends would be compatible with? Because your lifelong friends are people who you obviously get along with. And so partners, romantic partners who you're going to be with for years and decades, fundamentally are your best friend as well. And so you want to make sure you're optimizing for those qualities.
Definitely. One thing I just wanted to add on the whole dating in or out of your league, that's, I think, an important caveat to all of that, is it's not about dating in your league, because a top 10% online dating profile does not mean he's a top 10% guy. That's the key thing, is, and the data shows 90% of women go for the top 10% of male profiles. The bottom 90% of male profiles get crickets. They get nothing. Women are weirdly much pickier than men are when it comes to online dating. Men, we spread the love. Right? Like a guy will message, let's say, just to be really crass here, let's say a guy is a 5, all right? He's going to message 3s and 4s, 5s and 6s, 7s, 2s, he's all over the map. Women, top 10% profiles or nothing. And the point I always like to reiterate once again is that it's just a profile picture. It's just a picture and it's just some text. That's it. The real knowing if someone's a top 10%, the real stuff happens in real life. And the only way to know that, and so what does that all mean? The best strategy to online dating is to be open to the other 90% of guys that other women are just writing off because they don't have great profiles, meeting them in real life, and then finding the nuggets of gold, the guys who are actual 10% guys, top 10% guys. They just don't know how to market themselves. That's the key to online dating. Now, does that mean you got to go on a decent amount of online dates? Yes. But isn't anything in life that's worth, as important as love, worth it? Yes. But I'd much rather do that than only be chasing after these perfect profiles with these guys who sit in front of their Porsches and, say that they're 6'3" and, have the most charming, hilarious profile pictures and texts. I would rather just spread the love, see what's out there, and then find the nuggets of gold rather than going after those guys that every other person's going after. Because God, what a bunch of competition.
I think that I'm just going to reiterate something in there that you said is super important. Some of the best guys out there have some of the worst online dating profiles.
1,000%.
Because some of the best guys that are out there, they're humble. They're not excessively confident, and they just have a hard time writing something that is, it's tough to write an online dating profile because you really have to sell yourself. And that can be very hard and very difficult for a certain type of person. And so basing everything on these online profiles and going only after those top 10%, oh gosh, there's so much that you're missing in there.
Amen. Do you want to lead us to the final one, Gary?
Yeah. So the last tip we have, which is something we alluded to this earlier, which is, remember, it's not online dating, it's online meeting people. So you want to take things offline ASAP, no pen pals. And that sounds weird, right? It's obviously that's not what you want, but it's easy to get stuck in that pattern of perpetual messaging because guys like it, right? And guys will be in this pattern of perpetual messaging for 2 reasons. One, They're lonely and they don't have people to talk to. And so guys rely on women to have deeper, more emotional connections. They generally don't get that from their guy friend. So you're fulfilling a role for him. And it's not necessarily a role you want to fulfill, right? That's not what you're there for. The second reason why a guy might be doing this is he's just not sure if you're going to reject him or not. And so if you're constantly waiting for him to pop the question or kind of move this offline, or he may not do it. And it could be because he just likes the conversation, or more likely he's afraid of rejection and he needs even clearer signals. And so what we suggest is something very, very simple: is you send him a message as soon as you feel comfortable really with him and meeting him in person. You send him a message that basically says something like, I'd love to get to know you better, and I just find that it's easier to do that in person. How about you set something up for us next week? Whatever. I mean, those words aren't magical. So however, some version of that fits how you would, but make it clear you like talking to him, you want to meet in person, and that he should set something up.
Love it. You know, I want to give credit for this one, but this came from Coach Robin. She's one of our executive love coaches here. And a client was messaging with a guy online, and he asked her like a pretty in-depth, like a pretty deep question that she was like, I just want to move this offline. So Coach Robin had this phrase that this question would be much better answered over a glass of wine at a nice restaurant, or something like that. Maybe take out the nice restaurant, over a glass of wine, you know? And I love that. Like, what a like beautiful feminine way to answer that. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. Let's grab a glass of wine. So it's like, now what do most people do? Then instead they'll just answer the question. They go super, super deep. They have a pen pal for whatever. Who needs that? Let's move it, grab a glass of wine, and that's it. And by the way, if the guy doesn't want to grab a glass of wine, it's over. It's over. Now you know. So you've just saved yourself all this energy of having pen pals who you're just chatting with all day long. So if there's anything that you get from this, please, it is this. Online dating is simply a tool in your toolkit, but it is a powerful tool that can be used alongside meeting people organically. Use it for its strengths and avoid the weaknesses. Don't get dragged down by it. It does have its weaknesses. Don't allow it to throw you off, and have a little bit of fun every single step of the way. And if you want any help doing that, we're always here for you. We have a whole team of online dating experts. This is all we talk about every single day, and we're just here to support you on your journey to finding love at any age. So thank you, Gary. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Adam.